Okay, so yeah, so maybe we can start with a quick introduction about yourself. What drew you into the data field?
I've been in the data space since pre 2K, always helping people understand the power and value of data governance, data management. I go under the moniker these days of the data whisperer, data whispering being a way to help calm data down and help get it structured and organized and ready for whatever else an organization wants to put it to use for. And I focus really now on helping data leaders put together a business accessible narrative to convey the value of what they're trying to do in the data space to get executive support, get stakeholder engagement, to get funding. And I call that data storytelling for data management. So a way to put a story together that you can talk to your executives about or non-technical stakeholders that explains that value in very simple business-like terminology.
Very clear. I believe since you started, you've seen a lot of evolutions, new paradigm and stuff. So can you talk about that a little bit?
I think I've been through a number of cycles. I would say AI these days is probably the biggest cycle I've ever seen. But again, starting in the 90s and going through, the aughts and the teens and the 20s here, there's always something new coming along in the data space. And what I've found too, though, is no matter what it is, it still needs structured, linked, connected core data to make it work. Every company I've ever dealt with is trying to bring value to their relationships through their brands at scale. That's the way I like to articulate it. And if you want to do something at scale in an enterprise, you need technology. If you have technology, you need hardware, you need software, you need data. If you have data, you need data management. So from Gen AI all the way back, if we go back before computers, before electricity, to the concept of a general ledger, you still needed a chart of accounts. So
Yeah.
from Gen AI to Gen Ledger, you still need data management no matter what. You still need that structured content.
Yeah, sure. So uh, you've seen many cycles, but there is a continuity, which is how do we structure the unstructured data?
Yeah, there's always that value in unstructured. The way to get value out of data, at least from my simplistic viewpoint, is you got to put structure on it. I remember when big data came out, everybody was like, oh, big data is so fantastic. What makes big data big? Its lack of structure. What makes big data valuable? Putting some form of structure on it. Now we get to a point now where big data quite isn't as hot. It's more of what everybody's dealing with. But the tons of unstructured data that organizations have, some people say it's up to 80% of the data that an enterprise has is unstructured. The only way to get value out of that is to determine what entities are in that unstructured data. What is this data about? And that's the place I always like to play. What it's about. What are the entities? What are the products, the relationships, the brands, the whatever kind of core terminology an enterprise is using to help drive their business? How do we find that? And then, to move into the graph side a little bit, how do we draw relationships between those entities that either people don't know or have too much trouble tracking themselves? But
Mm-hmm.
once you get those entities, if you look at relationships, let's say as an example, here's a customer. What's their hierarchy? Who are they connected to? Who else do they deal with? What other parties are they engaging with? So all of that, I think, is critically important.
Yeah. I hear you talking about entities and relationships. So let's talk about graph. How do you see the value of graph technology in this context?
If you can't connect these things and you can't unlock the relationships between relationships, then you're really missing out on a lot of the value of the data you have. And while there's some standard things that a lot of data governance folks do, like hierarchies, taxonomies, classifications, which are fairly straightforward, the real nuance and the real exciting value comes from when you can find these links and these connections between relationships that you would elude just a human. Yet the graph technology can say, okay, this is connected to that in a way that you might be able to take advantage of. Or this is connected to that other thing that's connected to that other thing that all of a sudden shows a risk that you wouldn't have necessarily been able to see. So that value, once you've established those core entities, now you want to start to connect them and graph them together to then unlock a whole bunch of other insight.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. This
I would
has
hope
been
so. I would hope so.
yeah, yeah, and something that we noticed is, I've been in this field of graph technology for more than 7 years, and something we've noticed is that, all these analysis about market trends and stuff were predicting, a huge boom of graph technology like 10 years ago, and it took some time to actually take off. I have the feeling that it's starting. Maybe it's thanks to, you know, LLMs and Gen AI, but I would like to to hear more from you about that. How do you explain this? I would say delay in the traction of graph database, despite the value proposition that is very clear, and why do you see this technology getting more traction today?
I would hope it gets more technology. When we think about graphs, semantic layers, all the ontologies, a lot of those things are getting more and more attention lately. But you and I think graph technology is sexy. I don't know how sexy the business person who doesn't understand any of this would think it is. The stuff that ends up being sort of in the back room, the infrastructure stuff, the foundational stuff, never gets the spotlight that it should, while all the other cool, hot, sexy, fancy, cool stuff gets a disproportionate amount of the attention and funding, given how dependent it is on the structuring element of it.
Hmm.
And so it's an enabler, and enablers don't always aren't always the star of the show. It's a means to an end. And I think part of the storytelling aspect that I share with data leaders when they're trying to sell in this kind of stuff is showing that end result, whatever that end result is, some form of providing value to relationships through your brands at scale, can't happen if you don't have the foundational structural pieces in place first. It's just simply, it is not chicken or egg here. It is egg and omelet. If you don't have the data management portion under control, you are not going to develop the analytics and business intelligence side. It's just not going to happen. So that story is something I've been telling for 30 years in whatever iteration happens to be, the trend du jour, but it's still there. And I think part of it is because the business doesn't see this stuff either. It's really, they see the analytics, they see the output. They don't see what goes on to create that output. And it's like having somebody go to a fabulous restaurant. They want this spectacular meal. They don't always know what goes on in the back room in the kitchen in terms of the sous chef and the other folks who are working in the kitchen to prepare all that, and they don't always want to know about all that. But guess what? You don't get that great meal if you don't have those techniques going on in the kitchen.
Totally agree with you. So what resonates in me when you're talking about that is, one, we need to double down on graph visualization, and second is structuring the unstructured data is still an unsolved problem. Yeah.
And actually, a lot of the graph visualizations I've seen, you kind of look and say, okay, I see something, but I don't know what I'm looking at yet. How do you really simplify that to show an example of this is related to this, is related to this, which is related to this, which gives you value? The simpler you can visualize that, especially for non-technical executives, to have them go from, I have no idea what this is, to, wow, how do we live without it?
Hmm.
That's the story you want to be able to tell. And visuals help, simple explanations help, and a reminder that there's a cause and effect here. If you don't have this, you're not going to get that. It's as simple as that. You can't, just use the outputs that come out of any random process. They've got to be, especially at the enterprise level, they got to be structured. They got to be aligned to the operational realities of the company.
Okay, and so what is it? Do you believe is the main challenge that has to be solved yet in the field of data management?
Telling the story, being able, and I tell people come to me all the time. I do a lot of events and speaking and things like that. And people, data science students and enterprise CDOs come to me like, what should I focus on? For me, it's making sure you can tell a story. Everybody can tell a story. You talk to your parents about what you did over the weekend, or your spouse, or your kids, or your friends. So people naturally, humans know how to communicate in a story format. But sometimes, especially in the data space, to be great at data, you've got to be good at the hard skills, and communication is a soft skill. And if you want to be a leader and you want to drive initiatives, you've got to be able to communicate. And the thing we have going against us in the data department is that there are a lot better storytellers in an organization than those folks who are in the data space. There's, marketing knows how to tell stories. Sales, if they don't tell stories, they don't make a quota. Executives tend to be able to, know how to articulate the value of what they're trying to do. So learning and understanding storytelling technique is critical to succeeding in the data space. And as I mentioned, data management needs that own special type of data storytelling that can talk about why managing data is of critical importance to an enterprise.
Very clear. So this is the one piece of advice you give to leaders. Tell a story.
Learn how to tell a story. Yeah, get better at it. It's a superpower. It absolutely is. And focus on why it's important rather than how to do it. A lot of technical folks love to share the 57 steps they took to get to an answer or a result. Executives don't care about that. The CFO doesn't care about the 57 things you did and we pivoted here and then we tried to get to the point, get to the why. Why is it important? I've never met a CEO or a CFO or any non-technical business leader who cares about how you're going to get this data stuff done until they understand why it is important to their business.
What is the technology, the product that gets you excited recently?
I've been watching the AI stuff. That's great. But for me, it's the elevation of things like, as you've already mentioned, graphs, semantics, ontologies, hierarchies, structural, master data, reference data, metadata, MDM, RDM, PIM, RIM, DAM, all those foundational activities. For me, that they are finally getting more spotlight because the critical nature of all those techniques in terms of using that, leveraging that in AI are really, coming to the forefront, I think, because of the risk of when AI goes bad. And I think people are seeing, look, we can do all kinds of damage here. It's not like, oh, we had a report where 2 numbers didn't tie out. You can do some serious damage if you don't control your AI outputs. And I think people are realizing, look, hopefully we've got to get this structural stuff in place first.
Okay. All right. So thank you. Thank you, Scott.